Welcome, everyone, to the One More Game podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Jeremy Culver, a.k.a. Darce, and with me is the California Thirst Quencher, Pete Leja. Pete, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing okay. Just got back home from work. Had to squeeze the podcast in. We wanted to get our message, get our voice out there, and make sure. And, it's a somber day, as y'all might have seen with the title of the new episode. But, it's also a happy day in the sense of we're celebrating one of our good friends, the lives of one of our good friends.
Yeah, so those that have been following the channel on our various social media may have seen me announce earlier this week that a beloved friend and one of my best friends, and of course a big supporter here on the Press Start channel, as well as a guest host here on the One More Game podcast, Sharrieff Love Hamilton, or as everyone might have heard me say, Sharrieff, don't do me dirty because all I want is Love Hamilton, unexpectedly passed away back on Friday, October 28th. So it was, of course, a shock to all of us. None of us expected that to happen or for it to even be coming. Wasn't like he was, sick with some kind of like cancer, for instance. So it was a total shock. And so I wanted to do something to honor him here on this episode. We're going to honor him, though, a little bit later. It's our main catalog here for the show, because the way that I've been looking at it, and I hope that you, the listeners and viewers, if you're watching us over here live on youtube.com/pressstart28, the way that I've been looking at it is how Sharrieff would have wanted this. And I know for a fact how Sharrieff was and how Sharrieff is that he would have wanted us to do our thing, have the show as normal, and just get talk about him at a later segment. So we're gonna open the show just like we have, obviously, just like I did, and we'll be talking about what we've been playing lately here in just a little bit, and then obviously get to talking about Sharrieff. And I'm going to do my best. I've obviously shed a lot of tears over this week, losing Sharrieff. So I'm going to do my best to not shed those tears, and not just because I don't want to mourn or grieve over Sharrieff. Obviously, I think that anyone should grieve the way they should, but it's simply I've cried a lot, and so I kind of need to have some moisture inside my body. So I brought some water to help me, if I do cry some more off of here the podcast. And obviously, again, as you said, we're trying to honor the life of Sharrieff, not just sit here in mourning, but also celebrating Sharrieff. Yeah. So let's get into the episode of the podcast. So everybody, if you are here for the first time, welcome here to the One More Game podcast. This is a podcast that is centered around making sure you're informed about all the video game news happening around the world, whether it is Nintendo, Xbox, PlayStation, or PC. If there's news that you need to know about, we'll make sure that you know about it. When you're listening to this on your podcast service, make sure you hit the subscribe button or the follow button, depending on what your service offers. And if your podcast service allows reviews, please leave a 5-star review and tell everyone why you love the One More Game podcast, because we really enjoy bringing this to you each and every week. And if you'd like to be part of the show by asking a question or suggesting a topic for a discussion, you can head on over to pressstartnews.net/onemore-game and fill out that submission form, and your submission could be used on the next episode. Or you can drop that in chat over here live at youtube.com/pressstart28 when we are recording this live. And as we mentioned in the past couple of weeks, because of my new job and of course Pete's schedule, we've been a little bit all over the place. So make sure you're following us over on our social accounts so you can know when we're going to be going live. There are links in the YouTube description and of course in the show notes of the podcast descriptions over on your podcast services. But if this is your first time to the podcast, welcome to the podcast. I hope you enjoy your listen and I hope you enjoy your stay. But if you are returning, you already know what it is. We start off every single podcast talking about what we've been playing lately. So, Pete, what have you been playing lately?
The game that I'm going to focus on today is a game that I bought and downloaded on my iPhone. It's called Lunar Silver Star Story Touch. It is an import from the PS1 port of the Sega CD classic JRPG, Lunar the Silver Star Story. It is just an all-time classic for me. It's one of I call it the triumvirate of video games. It's Lunar Silver Star Story, Lunar 2, Eternal Blue, and Final Fantasy IX. That's my triumvirate, Trinity, Triduum, whatever you want to call it. That's my top 3 favorite games of all time. Not necessarily the best, but my favorite games. It's been a blast going through going through the game again. One of the things I really enjoy is it kind of has like a smarky, quippy humor when not necessarily in the scripting when you're watching, because one of the things that was about the game itself, the Sega CD one. It was one of the first games where it had full motion videos. It had for cutscenes and stuff like that. I had never seen that really in a video game before. Back when little Petey was like 5 years old when he was first going through it. And that was really cool. So it doesn't really have the humor in there, but when you talk to all the people, like you're kind of like your voice for the main character, because the main character is kind of supposed to be you, even though his name's Alex and you don't get to change his name, and he kind of sort of has some lines. Most of the time, the quips are made through Nal, who's a little white flying cat dragon thing. I don't want to spoil too much of what is going on with that in case you decide to play the game. But it kind of like floats on your shoulder and makes sarcastic comments about a lot of the things going on in the world. It's kind of funny to listen to. And he's not the only character that gets involved. A lot of the other ones do as well. And so that was one of my favorite things about it, is talking to the people on the map and stuff like that. And you get to some sarcastic comments and repartees and stuff like that. And then also, I will say it's an old JRPG. It's a classic version. You choose like what the characters do before you go into each turn, and then your characters kind of go through, like they roll the invisible die or whatever to decide whose character's fastest goes first and stuff like that. And you can kind of, once you play a few rounds of battle, you get to figure out like, all right, which character goes first and stuff like that. But it is very traditional, I will say. So if that's not something you're into, probably don't recommend it. It's a little awkward too with the touch screen, because you got to kind of like, when you're trying to select your guy to fight another character, you got to kind of like hover over it with your finger to make sure that like the enemy glowing is the one you want to attack, because if they're all in a bunch, kind of is sometimes a little hard. I'm sure you could, if you have one of those pens, probably a little more helpful. I usually just hover over with my finger, make sure which character is glowing is the one I want to attack. So that kind of thing is going on. But all in general, I mean, it's a great flashback for me and a great nostalgia rush, and I've been having a real blast playing it.
I know you, of course, have talked about Lunar several times here on the podcast, and you even mentioned it, of course, on the podcast we did a couple of weeks ago, probably actually almost a couple of months ago now, about our games that we felt needs more attention, or basically deserves more credit. And so I'm glad that, obviously, one, you ended up picking it up, because I know on that podcast we talked about the import onto the mobile phones.
It wasn't available on my Samsung at the time, but they haven't done an Eternal Blue, though. They haven't done a Lunar 2 port yet. They haven't done it since PlayStation. I'm really upset about it, honestly. I'm kind of like, come on, this is like almost a better game. Do that one.
Well, at some point, maybe it'll happen, and enough, griping and shaking our fist to have it happen. Maybe here on the podcast, having that happen, they'll do it. But
Chrono Cross.
Yeah, we did get Chrono Cross, so maybe we'll get Lunar as well from that aspect. For my game that I want to talk about, I played a couple of games this week. I'm going to talk about a game that kind of leads into our first segment, and basically, I would just want to talk about a game that Sharrieff and I were super excited to get into and play, and was actually the last game, in a sense, that Sharrieff bought for me as support for Press Start, but also in a congratulations or a housewarming gift for moving into the house. And that game is The Legend of Heroes Trails from Zero. So that, as many have known, and we talked about, of course, in our discussion right before the move about, RPGs that have really changed us, or had the story really mattered to us. And he talked about, of course, his love for the Legend of Heroes series. And part of it he continues to attribute is myself, because I'm the one who introduced him to Trails of Cold Steel. And he had known about the Trails series from before that. But apparently, like me, reintroducing that game through Trails of Cold Steel, he fell in love with it and really just, took the sales for that game. And so he bought that game for me. And, with his passing, before his passing, I just hadn't had time to start it up. And I left to go for a friend's wedding, as we talked about on the last episode. And so on the plane, I decided I'm going to play the game. And little did I know, of course, that on that plane that Sharrieff had already passed. And so I don't know if it was kind of like a sign to play the game, however it kind of ended up being. But I ended up playing the game. Yeah. And I love the Trails series to begin with, and Trails from Zero is just another great iteration of that game. Now, I got the game on Nintendo Switch, which was really weird because Sharrieff got it for me, but he was like totally adamant on getting it on PlayStation. So I don't know why he bought the Switch version for me, but I'm glad he did, because obviously it allowed me to
the plane, man.
Yeah, it allowed me to play it on the plane, and I'm having a great time with it. For those that don't know about the Trails from Zero saga or arc of the overall Trails series, the Trails from Zero is called the Crossbell arc, which is kind of the middle entry point into the overall story. There is the Trails in the Sky trilogy, which is and I'm having a brain fart right now,
but this is basically the prequel.
It is the prequel. I cannot remember the name of that area at the moment. I'm having a brain fart. And then the Crossbell series is the middle two, which is Trails from Zero and Trails 2 Azure, which is coming out in March. And then the Cold Steel series is the Erebonia arc, and that is 4 entries long. And then there is a new one that's coming out in the summer as well. That is the next segment of that overall story. And it's a lot of fun. You play as Lloyd Bannings, who is basically a detective and gets assigned to the Crossbell police unit, and he's not exactly ended up being assigned to the unit that he wanted to be in, and he's kind of thrown into like a misfit of adventurers as his squad for the police unit. And he's like, at first is kind of just like, what the heck is this? And throughout the game, of course, ends up, like most RPGs, right, kind of grows on the cast, and there's great dialogue, great discussion. It's always a blast, the Trail Steel. There's so much story and depth to it. So I'm fairly early into that, of course, right now. But again, it just felt so, for myself, so, I guess, common or so good feeling in a sense to play that game, especially with what ended up happening of finding out the knowledge that Sharrieff had passed, with touching that game, and it being, of course, that game that he bought as a housewarming gift for me to move into this house. So it felt good in 2 parts, kind of that aspect of playing the game, but also kind of felt like, again, like we kind of said, it almost felt like Sharrieff was kind of like, hey, it's time for you to play that game. So I felt good in 2 parts from playing that. But we've been talking about what we've been playing for quite a bit, so let's get into our show. And that is, of course, as you read in the headline, as I mentioned earlier, we're talking about honoring our beloved friend Sharrieff Love Hamilton here in the opening segment. Some of the other things we're going to talk about here as well is because, as I said, Sharrieff would want us to do our show, do our thing. He would not want us to stray away from that. So we're still going to talk about some upcoming stories, and that is the PSVR 2 price and details of release have been announced. PS Plus subscriber loss, PS5 sales numbers, Microsoft money, that's all coming up here, and a gaming insider has quit Twitter and Patreon. That's all coming up here on the One More Game podcast. But let's get into talking about the show, because obviously, again, this is something I felt very very, very passionate about doing, which is honoring, again, one of my best friends, Sharrieff Love Hamilton. And Pete, we talked about this off show, and I just want to shout out in the chat here, Shug Inspires. Thank you so much, Shug, for being here and honoring Sharrieff. As you said, he definitely was an amazing person, still is an amazing person, an amazing spirit to be here with us. But we talked about off the show that we were going to have you kind of start because, of course, you got to meet Sharrieff through being part of Press Start and here at the podcast. And obviously I've known Sharrieff for many, many years at this point. And so, Pete, just talk to me about, I guess, your sentiments and thoughts with Sharrieff, and obviously the shocking news that, when I told you and let you know what happened.
Well, when you told me that happened, I almost couldn't believe what I was reading. It was just so sudden. Like you said, as far as I know, he wasn't ill or he didn't have anything like that going on. So it was just kind of like, what? Like, am I really reading this right? Look, like you said, I met Sharrieff through Press Start. So I had mostly limited interactions with him, but all my interactions were awesome. I could tell how great of a person he is. How much as an example, and also how supportive he was of our show, if only just because how often he would step in willingly when I was unable to be a part of the cast, for one reason or another, whether I was sick or whatever, or I was traveling, or it was great. So several years ago, while I was still working near Washington D.C. In Virginia, I remember. I was sitting outside of a gaming store and I was listening to the radio, The Right Time with Bomani Jones, and he came back on air and he was clearly emotional, and he ended up talking about, he's like, I just learned of a passing just in this last commercial break. It was someone he was close to. I believe it was a teacher of his, and basically one of the things that I'd still like, one of the best suggestions, I guess I should say. I'm trying to think of the word. He said one of the best quotes I've ever heard from anybody. He said, "Call people back." The person in question was someone he didn't really lost touch with, but he hadn't talked to in like a year at least plus. And he was like, "I was been meaning to call him, and I never really got that chance. So just call people back." And clearly, Sharrieff was a person that would always call back. It seemed like. He'd be in the show chat. I interacted with him there. I interacted with him on the show. Obviously, we recorded an episode about a month ago at this point. Interacted with him in your chat and Twitch, and every interaction, like I said, was awesome. And really glad for being able to know him, to have chatted with him, have talked with him, had our gaming conversations, and I'm gonna miss him. I'm gonna miss him a lot, and I'm really, really happy we're able to honor him this way, because I think he'd appreciate it. And like you said, I think being able to go through our episode, that's what he would want to. So
Yeah.
you want to talk about just your favorite memory or whatever you remember best and most of Sharrieff? Don't do me dirty, because all I wanted to love him.
Of course, we're going to talk about that moments and stuff. For myself, I met Sharrieff probably back in 2012, if I remember correctly. It was then I bought my PS4 and we started playing together as a group. He was introduced to me through the rest of my gaming circle that I had at that time, and I remember at that time Sharrieff was always from the get-go, the jokester, the off-color humor, the random things that he would say. And I remember at first just being like, this guy is ridiculous. I have no clue what is going to come out of this dude's mouth. And it's just whatever it is just off the wall. But over that time, it changed from just him being that guy with the off-color humor that made the group laugh into a very close friend. We part of it stemmed from the fact that in fighting games, me and him both loved fighting games, as our group kind of did. But we were kind of an equal skill level, so to speak, when it came to fighting games. Like, we both loved fighting games, but we knew we both weren't very good at fighting games. So we would typically fight against each other and then just get our butts handed to us when we played against the rest of our friends because they were so good. And it just came that kind of constant thing of discussing, like, hey, are you going to get on? Let's play, some games together. And that just, again, transitioned into a very close relationship. Like when his mom passed away, I wasn't as close with him at the time, but we talked, and he kind of confided in me during that time. And then he was very close with his grandma. And then when she passed away a couple of years ago, again, we confided in each other, and we basically talked every other day. There were times, of course, just like with everyone, when you get busy, a couple of days go by before you get to talk to one another. But like, we talked fairly often, and not to kind of like dig up a sad point, but just off of that's how I kind of knew something was wrong, because a couple of days had gone by and I had messaged Sharrieff and I hadn't heard back, and I was just like, something is wrong. And I got very worried off of it. And obviously, as my social post has said, unfortunately, that worry ended up being true. But Sharrieff will always be known to me as that guy who would look at any situation and just find a way to make you laugh. And whether it was just the most outrageous joke, whether it was just a joke about himself, however it was. But Sharrieff and I had so much in common when it come to the video games that we liked, what we aspired to kind of do. And as you said, he was one of the biggest supporters of Press Start and myself. He always talked about, just how much he wanted everyone to hear Press Start and hear the One More Game podcast and be here to see this. And he would do things that I never asked him to do. He would go into Reddit threads and share the podcast and the videos, and he would do all these things to just try and get more people to check out Press Start. He would donate games for me to play. He would, those that know on my stream, he would randomly come into the stream and he would always gift subscribe a subscription to someone. He just always would do it. And he was always just that bright spot in the chat, as you mentioned, in the podcast. He stepped out of his comfort zone to be a guest on the podcast and fill in those spots when Isaac stepped away and we needed to fill time. And then, of course, like you said, when you were busy, Sharrieff was always the first one right there to be like, I will do it. I will find a way to be there and be there, for the podcast. And that's the kind of person that Sharrieff was. And again, I'm going to use the term is because I fully believe that wherever he is right now, he is still beaming with humor and jokes and wanting to see, this podcast succeed, see Press Start succeed, and by association, you and I succeed. And that's the thing that I will always take from it. I hope that our listeners remember and keep in their mind and their thoughts as they go. And exactly as you said, it happened with Bomani, but I've always felt this way, and I truly believe it is, call people back, reach out and talk to people. Like you never know when your time is up. And obviously, with Sharrieff, with how young he was, his birthday was coming up in a couple of weeks, and you would think that we were going to have many, many more years together, but the years that we did have together was such a bright spot, that I will forever treasure him. I'm I haven't decided exactly what we're doing yet, but I will just announce it here. We are going to be doing more to honor Sharrieff here on the podcast, kind of going forward. We're going to be looking at the subscribers. The name around that subscribers right now, I call them the TV news crew. That's changing. We're going to do that, something around Sharrieff, because again, he was always trying to make sure that people that were subscribing to the channel were getting benefits, were getting love in a sense. And so we're going to be renaming it around him. I don't know exactly what yet. Obviously, I'm still reeling and grieving over this, but I want to do something so that Sharrieff's memory is never lost here on the Press Start channel, because he meant so much to where we got now. Where we got to this point, a lot of that obviously came from hard work and making it happen, but Sharrieff was a big part of that and a big pusher in saying, like, Jeremy, you can do more. You can do this. And so, like, I will forever treasure those moments and those memories with Sharrieff. And I, again, wherever he is, I know he knows it. I've said it to him before, and I'll say it again. I love you, Sharrieff, and I'll miss you. And I cannot wait till we meet again and meet up with one another. So
You're one of one, buddy.
Yeah.
You're one of one.
100%. So I tried my best not to cry. Obviously,
you almost got through it.
Got there towards the end a little bit.
It's all right. The screen censored it. The screen.
The screen. I did notice the screen went blurry.
He's like, he doesn't want it. He doesn't want to show anybody.
Right as it happened. But yeah. So that is the case. And again, thank you all for letting Sharrieff be a part of this as well. When it comes to how. The impact again that he's made and being welcomed as a guest host here on the podcast. But let's move on to
thanks for letting us enjoy a part of Sharrieff's life. Yeah,
exactly.
Sorry.
And so as Sharrieff would want the podcast to keep going and keep doing its thing. So we're gonna do that. We're gonna do just that. We're gonna start talking a little bit about some gaming news. So let's talk about our other story, and this is coming from Game Informer, written by Marcus Stewart. And it is Sony has revealed PlayStation VR release date, price, bundle, and new games, and that goes as follows. Sony announced that PlayStation VR 2 will launch on February 22nd and has revealed its price, 2 bundles, as well as accessories and newly announced games. The standard package will retail at $549.99. It will include 2 PSVR Sense controllers, obviously the headset, as well as a stereo headphones. You can also, if you want to, get Horizon Call of the Mountain, which is a VR2 game being made obviously for VR2. That edition runs at $5.99 and tosses in a digital code for that first-person Horizon spin-off, as well as all the things that come in the standard box. Of course, there's also some accessories, but we're going to skip that. We're going to go down into the next part of the story. The pre-orders will go live on November 15th. And I did read that, of course, that it is releasing on February 22nd. Now let's talk a little bit about some of the games that got announced for it. There are 11 new PSVR 2 titles that have been unveiled. And of course, there is a brief description here in the Game Informer, as well as a brief release window if it doesn't have a release date already. And we have After the Fall, a post-apocalyptic co-op shooter by the studio behind Arizona Sunshine. That's coming out in 2023. Cities VR Enhanced Edition, which is an improved version of the VR edition of City Skylines, which is coming out February 22nd. Cosmonius High, restore an alien high school in this wacky adventure title from makers of Job Simulator, coming out in 2023. Crossfire Sierra Squad, a new VR first-person shooter that the Crossfire franchise, that's coming out in 2023. The Dark Pictures Switchback VR, a roller coaster VR horror action shooter by Supermassive Games, coming out in 2023. Hello Neighbors Search and Rescue, team with friends to free a captive friend in their VR take on Hello Neighbor, which is coming out 2023. Jurassic World Aftermath Collection, an enhanced bundle of parts 1 and 2 of the Jurassic Park survival action game, which is coming out 2023. The Light Brigade, a roguelike first-person shooter with procedurally generated levels, in 2023. Pistol Whip, the acclaimed rhythm action game, is enhanced for PSVR 2 and will be a free upgrade to existing owners, coming out in 2023. Tentacular, the solving physics-based puzzles as a giant adorable Kraken, coming out in 2023. And the one that that I'm probably most excited for, Zenith: The Last City. It is basically the VR Sword Art Online game that we were talking about from before that released on Steam. That's coming out on February 22nd. So, Pete, what do you think about the price point, obviously the release date, and then, of course, some of these games coming out for the system?
I don't know if you noticed, this is a little bit of an aside, but someone on Twitter has made an account that's supposed to be detailing by the minute of all the things that happened in Sword Art Online that started midnight tonight, because it said Sword Art Online launched. And that was the first thing I thought when I saw the Zenith thing. I saw a couple of posts about that. It was kind of funny. I want to make this clear. I want to be clear on this. You have to have a PS5 to play the PS5 VR2, right?
Correct.
So you're dropping another $550 at least on already the $600 whatever dollars you got to drop to get the PS5. It's a lot of money. I mean, I get it, but damn, that's I don't know if I'd be able to just drop that on a gaming system unless I knew I was going to enjoy it. They are coming out with a lot of games if not upon release, a little bit after, so that's good. We talked about Zenith. That one looked kind of cool. I don't know if I'd like this game, but the solving puzzles as a giant adorable kraken seems kind of weird. Tentacular. I didn't know Cities Skylines, the kind of like adjacent Sim City, was actually like a VR edition, and they were making another one or updated version of that. So that was kind of interesting. I hope these games are fun, and I hope people that buy this have a lot of enjoyment for the games. I myself am not really a VR person. I have not been able to try one so far, so I wouldn't call myself someone that's super invested into it. But I'm hoping it does well, and I hope that a lot of people that especially enjoy the VR experience enjoy this, and this is a very good one. Despite the expensive price point.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised by the price point, but also not, because of the fact that, of course, PlayStation had to increase, basically what they said is because of the economic situation with COVID and all that jazz, that they had to increase the price of the PS5. So, I'm not surprised in that regard, but it is higher than, of course, I think I remember the PSVR launch price was. Now, this is definitely much more high tech with it. I don't have it right here in front of me, but this is very good when it comes to what you get out of the system and the enhancements to make this a much better system. Like right now, you don't need the PSVR cam or the PlayStation camera, which with PSVR you do, and there's a couple of other things with that. But I mean, I'm as I've said before, I'm totally wanting to get this because I enjoyed my time with PSVR when I did get to try it out. I thought it was a lot of fun, and I do think that it's not just gimmicky, because some people felt that VR is more of a gimmick than it is for fun aspects. Now, granted, if you don't have the funds, because of course you bought a PSVR or a PlayStation 5, that you don't have the funds for PSVR 2, the Meta Quest 2 is supposed to be a great option for you. I know it is all enclosed. I don't think you require, you can use a PC with it. So obviously you might have to drop the money on a PC, but you don't have to have a PC with it because it's all enclosed in the system, and that's pretty good. And it is completely wireless, so you can do full 360, while PSVR 2 has a single wire versus what it used to have. So I kind of think that this is a cool option. Again, I look forward to it. The games itself, it's going to be weird to say this, but obviously outside of Zenith, which I really actually said already, the one that actually is interesting to me is the Dark Pictures Switchback VR game. And the reason for it is because when the Until Dawn Rush Blood, if I remember correctly, is the name of the game. When Until Dawn Rush Blood, the roller coaster VR shooter from Supermassive Games, come out, I thought that sounded stupid, because if anyone knows what Until Dawn is, it's literally a basically choose your own adventure B-rated horror movie. And I was like, what is this game is going to be like as a roller coaster shooter. But it actually turned out, I didn't get to play it. It turned out to be one of the good, better VR games at launch, and a lot of people actually really enjoyed it. So I'm hoping that this Dark Pictures Switchback one is also a lot of fun. My biggest complaint, though, I want to say on this, now this is not any new news, but the PSVR 2 is not backwards compatible with PSVR games, and there is a myriad of reasons, but essentially PlayStation says it's because of all the enhancements that the PlayStation VR 2 has, including not needing a camera anymore to utilize, that the games just aren't compatible because of it. So I'm a little shocked by some of these games not there's not more games coming out for launch, because based off this number right here, you have Zenith coming out on the day of launch. You have Cities VR coming out on the day of launch, and you have Call of the Mountains on launch. That's 3 games for launch. Mm-hmm. Now, granted, could there be some other updates or enhanced ports that could be coming, the one that has down here, the Pistol Whip is get a free upgrade to existing owners? Could that be coming? Cool, yes, maybe. But Pistol Whip, for instance, just says 2023. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be there at launch. So I wonder what's going to be there to help, fill up your library a little bit to be that reason to drop the $550 as you talked about. That's a lot of money to drop, that potentially you get one game, you play it, and you're like, all right, now I got to just wait a long time for my next PSVR 2 game to come because I can't play my old games with it. So that's the only thing that's my complaint and shock with it.
Yeah, so really quick before we move on to the next story, the launch price for PSVR was $399.
Yeah.
$399 rather, so.
That's what I figured. I was I don't recall it being at 500.
Yeah, definitely. I thought they announced a price already. Honestly, when I read that, I was kind of surprised. I was like, didn't they already? Wasn't it lower? Maybe not. So, but yeah, the original one was $399 upon release.
Now, and I will say, if I remember correctly, that original release did not include the PlayStation Move controllers. So, you did have to drop the extra money on the accessories. That was just for the headset. Anyway. Yeah. So I was so there is a slight justification because this one comes with controllers, but still, again, it is a different price point. So this next part, I'm kind of bulking a couple of stories together because I feel they kind of all blend into one. So I'm going to read a couple of snippets of each article, and then we'll talk a little bit about it. So we're starting with Video Games Chronicles, coming from Andy Robinson. It's PlayStation Plus has lost nearly 2 million subscribers since its revamp, but it basically says that revenue is up, and it goes as follows. PlayStation Plus subscribers have dropped, obviously, nearly 2 million users since its revamped launch back in June. That's according to Sony's latest subscriber estimates, which were published on Tuesday as part of its FY 2022 Q2 financial results, the first full quarter since its launch, the revamped PS Plus. Despite the revamp, subs have declined for the third quarter in a row. Total number of subscribers stood at 45.4 million for the 3 months ending in September 30th, 2022, which is down from 47.3 million in the previous quarter. Skipping down a little bit, but despite that, of course, Sony services revenue, which encompasses PS Plus and advertising, actually increased by 10% from 106 billion yen to 116 billion, which represents its best performance to date for a quarter. And I'm also scrolling down because I find this part pretty hilarious. Basically, when asking or deciding what is the reason for this, Sony CFO Hiroki Totoki blamed declining third-party game and PlayStation 4 sales and more people going outdoors as the reason for the drop. There's been a declining number of members of PlayStation Plus. However, in the second quarter, we renewed our services, and there hasn't been a great momentum as a whole. Also, we didn't make aggressive promotions during the second quarter. Therefore, in the future, we are going to have more penetration on PS5, and we are going to have very good titles. And then, of course, more people are going outdoors, and we have yet to get out of of the negative cycles. So that's that. But we also found out the PlayStation 5 has passed 25 million sold. This is coming from IGN, written by Anthony Wood. And of course, this was detailed during that. So Sony sold a further 3.3 million PS5s in the third month period leading up to September 30th, which equaled the amount it shifted during the same period in 2021. Sony has therefore sold about 5.7 million PS5s since the beginning of this fiscal year, which is starting in April, leaving the company in somewhat of an uphill battle if it wants to reach its target of selling 18 million consoles by March 2023. And then we're going over to GameSpot real quick. This is from Eddie Muckich, and it is that Xbox loses as much as $200 on every Xbox sold. That is according to an interview from Phil Spencer, where he was talking to CNBC during also it's a write-up from CNBC of a recent Wall Street Journal Tech Live event where he said that is this case. Consoles as a business model, as the overall scope of gaming is fairly small relative to the places people play. Consoles evolved to a business model much different from phones, which consoles are actually sold at a loss in the market, and they hope to, of course, make up for that by difference in selling games, accessories, and, of course, with Xbox, getting people to subscribe to Game Pass. So, Pete, I know I threw a lot at you, so you decide what you want to break down and your thoughts on those three articles altogether.
So, what that tells me is that's sorry, there's a lot of talking going on.
It's all good.
I don't know if you can hear it. I hope not. So I mean, it talks. What it tells me is the first off for the Xbox One. I guess we'll work in reverse order. For those of you who don't know, gaming consoles in general, randomly Nintendo says they don't do this, but gaming consoles in general sold at a loss. The reason they make a bunch of money on it is the games and the all the controllers and all that other stuff that they are made, that they sell based off of that. So I mean, it's $200 sounds like a lot when there's for every Xbox they sell, but they make that money back in spades with even if just on the Game Pass. And obviously it is a very lucrative model because they would not do it if they weren't making money off of it. They wouldn't do it that way. So, but it is kind of interesting to actually get a solid number on that. That was the interesting part of that one. Moving on to the PlayStation 5, the 25 million units sold. That's pretty good. I don't know how they do their predictions on like how many units are sold in which fiscal year, because I mean they're at least halfway through their fiscal year already, and they need another like 12 million units sold. So I don't know if they just assume or predict that a bunch are going to be sold during the holiday season to make up for what they haven't sold yet. I would assume that, you would assume that the most units are sold within the holiday season, but I would also predict that the fiscal year after that, January, February, and March, for the fiscal quarter after that, you wouldn't have as much units sold because you sold them all in, October, November, December, or what have you. So, like, I don't know what their projection is there. They only sold, I think it was like 6.7 million units in the fiscal year, and they need to make 18. So they at least released a statement that said they're optimistic. I question how optimistic they actually are about reaching that number. So we'll see, I guess, with their next monthly quarter, or their quarterly meeting, rather. We'll see what their projections are. And the last one, this one was kind of interesting because my first thought was like, well, you lost 2 million subscribers. How many of those subscribers were just people that just had the Netflix thing where you just sign up for like the free month and then like you kind of forget about it and they just keep charging you because they ask for your credit card. So I wonder how many of those people were dropped because they switched over to the new thing and the people didn't transfer over. Also, it went from like the total number of subscribers stood at 45.5 million thereabouts for the 3 months, which is down from 47.3 million. So it's like, yeah, you lost 2 million, but you still have 45 million subscribers. So like, it's one of those. It sounds like it's a big loss, but like, how big is it really? Going back to the 25 million units article, I will say that they said that they had a rather big drop of the company, the operating income from second quarter 21 to second quarter 22. almost over 40 billion yen. But I will say that also includes a lot of all the costs in game development and decrease in sales, but also like because it also includes money spent on acquisitions, like Bungie, which is 3.7 billion dollars by itself and that kind of thing. So yeah, how much of that was actually like a negative because they also like made giant acquisitions like that. So you don't know. So all in all, it sounds like most of the stuff is going up. I still question, but the big question is, will Sony be able to sell 18 million PlayStation 5 units like they projected originally?
Yeah, it's one of those things that's really interesting. I put it in our show notes, but it was just really funny that they were just like, yeah, we lost a lot of subscribers because gamers are going out and touching grass. Like they're not sitting inside right now.
That might be the second best quote we've had this year. The first one being like, "Oh, we're mad because Halo launched," or Battlefield was mad because Halo.
Halo surprisingly dropped on them.
Yeah, it's just like maybe your game was good; it wouldn't have mattered. But hey, I don't know.
Yeah, so it was one of those things why it was really funny that they were saying that, but they did post an update, kind of talking about it where in the subscriber numbers, basically saying that they feel that the subscriber decline was influenced because there was a greater decline in the user engagement among PS4 users, more than they were expecting. They said that they basically saw a 4% drop, and it was something that again they didn't really expect, but they said on the other hand, the ratio of PS Plus subscribers among PlayStation 5 users remains at a level significantly higher than the PS4. And that totally makes sense because, of course, the PS5 users bought the newest system, so of course they want to get as many games as they can, and they had the new system out there that they can play a bunch of games on there, including PS5 games. So like, that makes total sense. I wonder where it's going to be as the rest of the year goes out. And it's similar to what you said, too. They're saying, of course, they shipped 25 million. It's important to always remember when they talk about shipping the numbers, that doesn't necessarily mean, of course, the sale of the systems. And that's why they kind of talk about those numbers in two different aspects. They're saying that they can hit this 18 million by March 2023. They talk about this. And I love how IGN writes it in here that CFO said that 18 million target is still achievable as Sony exceeded its own expectations by fabricating 6.5 million PS5s during the Q2 period alone. Fabricating makes it sound like they made up the number, but I know that they're meaning like it's just like producing. Yeah. They're like say they were able to produce that much to be sold, and they said that the demand is still there, even with the price increase on the systems. It's still there, and they're continuing to monitor that price increase as they go forward. So, like, that's kind of cool. But it's still important to note, which is why I put all these stories together, is as you said, because I'm working in the reverse order. Like, even with the price increase, PlayStation is probably still losing money on it because, like, Xbox has in there. They're losing $200 roughly on every console sold, and what makes the moneymaker is the game sold, the hardware sales, because there's always a percentage that they get for the games being sold on their platforms. And so that's kind of always the interesting aspect of it, and how much do these subscription services benefit. We talked about that story last week about, like, would you rather have the consistent money, so to speak, of a subscription service, or would you rather have the basically the bulk come through like purchasing a game? So it's like this month you get $60 because someone bought a game, or would you rather have each month $15 rolling in, from that $60 purchase? So it's interesting in that aspect. I wonder what this is going to be like throughout the rest of the year, especially as we're heading into the holiday season, where what happens every time people buy a bunch of consoles and buy a bunch of games. Like right now, I'm not actually sponsored by them, but hopefully Target will actually sponsor us. Right now they have a buy two get one free deal going on heading into the holidays. So it's one of those things like where do these projections and numbers go for the rest of the year? I'm really curious, but each system has things that how they handle their services. One thing, though, that will not be here going into the holiday season is a gaming insider that I was actually a follower of, and so it was a big shock when this kind of happened. So we're going to The Verge for this article, and it's written by Jess Weatherbed, and it is Nibel is leaving Twitter. And partially, you can blame Elon Musk for it. So it goes as follows. Nibel, I guess I should say, because that's how I would always pronounce it. Nibel has left the building. The popular Twitter user, best known for their steady, reliable stream of gaming industry news and recognizable mob psycho avatar, announced that they would be leaving the platform, citing a lack of financial support and concerns over Elon Musk's leadership. A final message was posted to the now locked account announcing the departure definitively, saying, quote, "After some introspection, I've made the decision to focus my time and energy elsewhere and move on from Twitter. This marks the end of my video game coverage and my active participation in this platform." He also posted a more detailed message to their Patreon subscribers, confirming that the month-old Patreon account would also be abandoned and that future plans for a Discord server were being scrapped. Billing for the Patreon account has already been deactivated and refunds for recent payments are being looked into. Nibel explained the attempts to create reliable revenue stream had proved unsuccessful. Quote, I've learned a lot in a short period of time. Unfortunately, I was not able to create an interesting and sustainable Patreon, which is evident in the number of patrons stagnating during the first weekend and the first of many pledges being deleted during the first week. I've miscalculated the value of my Twitter activity and realized that it is nothing worth supporting by itself for the vast majority of people. While Nibel wasn't a verified Twitter user, they managed amass 500,000 following and became one of the most reputable sources for gaming news on the platform, often reporting on new releases and updates faster than major gaming publications, which is one of the reasons that I followed him. But he did say, of course, when it came to the parts of leaving, he said, quote, "I don't think that Twitter has yet experienced good leadership, and this trend will not change with Musk either. I do not trust the platform. I do not trust Musk and his seemingly infinite immaturity." So, Pete, I don't know if you are a fan of Nibel, if you followed him at all, but what was your reaction to reading this article and the news that Nibel posted?
I mean, my major reaction was it's hard making money doing this kind of thing. It is not easy. It is difficult. You have to find your niche and you have to find your fan base. And Jeremy, you probably know better than I do. You kind of need to do, if you want to be successful, you need to do more than just be a person on Twitter. You need to do other things. You need to be a content creator. You don't like just reporting on news stuff. Like the other reporters in video gaming is that they also write articles. They also, do stuff for websites, or they're freelance or something like that. The Twitter is just them reaching out. That's not their main source of income or anything like that. It's just them reaching out to fans and getting like the fastest information out there. And they're like, if you want more in depth, go to this article, go to this link, and then Forbes or whoever, GameSpot or whoever will pay them for that. That's where you get your income. Just being a person on Twitter, it's not necessarily a way to make money off of that, because of for one of the big reasons, like a lot of these like newspapers that are like mostly online now, New York Times, for example, a lot of their articles are going to end up free, even if it's subscribed for them. A lot of their articles that are about major stories and stuff like that are going to end up free on another website. Maybe not as in depth, maybe not as much analysis, but it's just going to be there, especially if it's a major story or something like that. So yeah, he was the fastest one to do it, but it's real, or I should say, they were the fastest to get some of the game releases and stuff like that out there. But speed only goes so far. If you don't have anything else to actually make money off of that. Like for instance, did you know that they had a Patreon at all? Was that a thing you knew about?
No, honestly, the article, or when they, announced leaving Twitter, I was like, oh man, that sucks. And it was in a comment. It's actually the comment that was put in this story. And on my screen, you'll see, like, it shows I hearted it because I didn't know. It says he's leaving Patreon too. That's how I found out he had a Patreon. And I was like, oh.
Yeah, it's and that's something that like I don't know if they promoted it that well. And I mean they it says in the article they had several subscribers who then dropped their money or who then deleted their subscription after the first week or so. But I mean that's what happens. There's a average person isn't a billionaire, right? They only have a finite amount of money to go around. Even if they want to support certain Patreons, they can't support everyone, and that's something you need to kind of calculate into your equation to figure out whether this is sustainable or not. It also sounds like that maybe there was some other stuff in their lives that were going on that was like, I got other stuff I gotta do. This isn't something that is sustainable. I don't want to be a part of that. Along with the Twitter and Elon Musk purchasing. I don't know if you've seen this. The latest on the so for those of you who are unaware, maybe aren't, Elon Musk purchased Twitter for $44 billion, which is way over the price of what it was actually worth. But to continue on for that, one of the big things that Elon Musk was promoting was freedom of speech, right? Well, at 2:53 p.m. my time today, so that was about 3 hours ago now, 2.5 or so, because a bunch of people were making phony accounts that are changing their name to match other people because, quote, comedy is legal again on Twitter, unquote, or something like that.
Yeah, he said that, yeah.
Yeah. He tweeted out, Elon Musk tweeted this out. Going forward, any Twitter handles engaging in impersonation without clearly specifying parody will be permanently suspended. To kind of explain where that's been going. And, it's pretty great. So, yeah, leadership in Twitter, probably not going to be great. There have been stories about that where Elon Musk has been firing people and realizing he's probably going to have to hire them back to try to do some of the things that he wants to do because it turns out just being rich doesn't mean you know how to operate stuff. I know that seems odd to understand, but I know how to operate in television. I don't know how to operate doing auto mechanic stuff like my father. I'm not great at construction loans like my mother. But that's who I would go to for those things. But apparently Elon Musk thought I just have all the answers, and quickly finding out it sounds like that is not the case. So a little aside on there, but maybe Nibel, after taking a little bit of reprieve, will come back. And if they don't, I mean, it was a good run. I guess is the best I could say.
Yeah, I hope that Nibel ends up coming back after some time off. Maybe doesn't have to go as hard on Twitter like they were, but like you said, I mean, Nibel was great, and this is not to sugarcoat the work that they did. Nibel did a lot of great work putting out there, but exactly as you said, you have to from the beginning find ways that you can monetize your work, and I think that's just the thing that Nibel maybe didn't do as well. Through affiliate marketing, making content, building a following off of Twitter that can actually generate income to them. Now, of course, with Elon buying Twitter, they say that Elon says that he's going to find ways to help with, basically monetizing for content creators, so people are actually making money on Twitter, but who knows what that is. There's other options and avenues to do it, but like just posting that information is not going to be there. And simply, like you said as well, having a Patreon is great. And shy plug here, I have a Ko-fi account, which is similar to Patreon, that you guys could always go and support if you want to do it. But at the same time, you have to physically send money to do that. And that is hard for some people to do. They just don't have the income to do that. But what they can do, right, is come to your website where there is an ad that plays for them to look at, which then you receive a cut of that income. Or, there are other ways like buying a video game through an affiliate link, and I get a cutback, which, by the way, if you ever see those links, you click on those and buy those, because that does end up supporting the channel. Like, there's those reasons for doing those things. And I just don't think Nibel had that, because I followed them for a while, and I don't recall ever seeing like an affiliate link for them to buy something that could support them. Or, again, they didn't make content elsewhere that I knew about that they could that someone could go to. So, it was sad to see it. And again, I hope that the time away, maybe Nibel gets to a point where they feel they're comfortable coming back, whether it is on Twitter, whether it's on a different platform, and doing the work that they did. It doesn't have to be as hard as they did before, but they're definitely missed. And of course, if this is the last thing, if they are actually gone, then job well done for what you did, and I hope all the best for that for them in the future with whatever it is that they decide to do, whether it's on social media or in their personal lives, because they deserved a lot that they actually received, but of course, you want it. Basically, the last thing of saying, I obviously I misjudged my my value is like you have value, Nibel. So I hope that you hear that and understand that. And before we get into the upcoming games, I just want to make a mention. Obviously, we did our segment talking about and honoring Sharrieff earlier in the show, but we had some people kind of pop in and say their things, and so I just want to shout out Kawu. Obviously, another person that many of you that have followed the stream for quite a while, or the channel for quite a while, know about Kawu. Kawu was also very close with Sharrieff, and he talked about Sharrieff was a great guy to all of us, and Sharrieff was. So just want to give another shout out to those things, and of course the other people that have jumped in chat, Cobalt and Hatsuma, who also knew Sharrieff. Obviously Cobalt through the podcast, Hatsuma, one of the gaming groups that helped introduce Sharrieff to me, as well as Kalwu helping introduce Sharrieff to me. They know exactly just how awesome a person Sharrieff was. So I want to just say real quick, when does the new Trails to Azure game come out? Well, it comes out in March. I don't remember exactly, and Sharrieff would make sure that you want to go buy that game. So if you haven't already, make sure you have that pre-ordered. But that's coming out way down the way. We're talking about some games that are coming up here this week that you can go out and buy, and I'm going to tell you all about them, which starting with on Friday, November 4th, because that's normally when we record this episode. So we're talking about that one. That is Demon Throttle for Switch, Harvestella for Switch and PC, It Takes Two for Switch, and Eterna Noctis for Switch. On Monday, November 7th, you have Soulstone Survivors for PC. On Tuesday, November 8th, you have A Little to the Left for PC and Mac. Football Manager 2023 for Xbox Series, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. If I remember correctly, that is coming to Game Pass. Oddworld Soulstorm, that's coming to Switch. Return to Monkey Island for PS5 and Xbox Series, that is coming to Game Pass. Sifu and for Switch. Sonic Frontiers for PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. Wednesday, November 9th, God of War Ragnarok for PS5 and PS4. Thursday, November 10th, we have Vampire Survivors for Xbox Series and Xbox One. That's coming out to Game Pass. Shadow of the Guild for PC. Lunastice, for Switch and PC. This Way Madness Lies for PC. Friday, November 11th, you have Atari 50, the anniversary celebration for PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. Resident Evil 2 for Switch. Legend of Keepers for Xbox Series and Xbox One. Tactics Ogre Reborn for PS5, PS4, Switch, and PC. And Valkyrie Elysium for PC. Pete, is there anything that's catching your attention?
In case you were curious about the Football Manager, 13 hours ago, apparently my Xbox Live got a message saying pre-install it. So yes, it is coming to Xbox Live.
I thought I remember that.
Man, there's a lot on this list. So I'm really not going to go through some of the more major names because y'all are like super into God of War and new Resident Evil 2 and all that. I'm going to try to go some of the smaller ones. Well, there is one major one that's going to be on the list. Soulstone Survivors, I was kind of looking at some of the stuff surrounding that. It looked kind of interesting. I don't know if I'll actually play it, but that was kind of one of the ones where I was just like, outside of the major names, if I wanted something a little small, like a little more less known game, that was kind of one I was looking at. I'd probably be disowned from my family because of how much my dad loves Oddworld. If I didn't mention Oddworld Soulstorm, it's a reboot of, I believe, the second game, Oddworld Abe's Exodus. That was from the original PlayStation. The Oddworld games, everyone I played has always been a blast. So that one's more of a puzzle game, if you want to get in on that. And then I've been hurt before, Jeremy. I've been hurt before, but I'm giving him one more shot. Sonic Frontiers. I want to see that game succeed. I want to see that game do well. I really hope it is. I'm gonna wait, but I really want to kind of try to buy it. can't wait too long because Pokemon's coming out soon. So, gotta have time for that.
Yeah, Pokemon, I think, is going to be on next week's episode. Or no, that actually reminds me. Speaking of which, we won't have an episode next week because I have to work an event. So, this is we're taking a small 1 week hiatus, potentially, I should say. Maybe I get a wild hair up my butt and do a solo episode or something like that. But we're not planning to do one. So for myself, the games that I want to talk about, so I mentioned that Harvestella looks really cool, so I want to end up picking that one up. I agree with you. Soulstone Survivors looked really cool, so definitely looking forward to that. I made a YouTube or a TikTok video that's also here on YouTube, youtube.com/pressstart28 that you can check out, where I talked about Sonic Frontiers and God of War Ragnarok. Looks really cool, or those are games that I'm obviously looking forward to. But the ones that I want to really hit on is Tactics Ogre Reborn. So I have been so wanting to play this game for so long. It was basically, there's a 2010 version that is a modernizing version of the 1995 version of this game, and the Tactics Ogre Reborn is modernizing the 2010 version, and it's the game that basically allowed for my favorite tactical strategy game, Final Fantasy Tactics, to even come to fruition. So I really cannot wait for Tactics Ogre Reborn. I really hope to love it the way that everyone talks about this game. So I'm right there with Cobalt talking about never getting to fully play it. I've played some emulation of it, but I've never actually finished it. So I'm really looking forward to playing that. But the one that I actually really want to talk about, and it kind of surprised me, is This Way Madness Lies, because this is a turn-based RPG that I came across when making this list. And it's actually like a Sailor Moon turn-based strategy game, and it looks really cool. I really like how this is set up, how the graphics look for this game, and how if you look at it on Steam, the second or the very first screenshot after the video, I love how this combat looks. It reminds me of Phantasy Star, the original Phantasy Star games, but a modernized look of it. And again, it is basically Sailor Moon. You're using magical schoolgirls as you do this fight, and they even call it Shakespeare and Magical Girls. What could be better? I don't know, but I'm really looking forward to this one. It comes out on November 10th. Yeah, I'm looking forward to finding out. I think this one looks really, really awesome, and I hope at some point it comes to Switch, because I think it would be great on that system. But Pete, that's all we have here for the One More Game podcast episode. Is there anything you want to leave our listeners with before we send them off into the week?
I remember from our episode that with them that our trio that he was a big fan of Dog. He's a big fan of The Legend of Trails. I got a game that I've been playing that was Legend of Trails, so maybe I'll finally get onto that one. I won't say complete it. All these games are super long. But I'll finally get out there and maybe get closer to beating it.
There you go.
Not just in his honor, but because that series is honestly a lot of fun. But also in his honor, it definitely reminded me of it.
Yeah, if I could say anything for you guys, I know I already mentioned it earlier, but if you're a fan of RPGs, I think you would be doing yourself a service if you go and check out any of the Legend of Heroes games. Ideally, you want to start with Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky. But at the same time, as long as you start with the first entry of any of the arcs, you're fine. So if it's Trails in the Sky, if it is Trails from Zero, if it's Trails of Cold Steel, go and check those out. You're doing yourself a service. But at the same time, it is a great way to honor Sharrieff, as that is, again, a series that he loved dearly, and I think that again just would warm his heart knowing that his impact got you into looking into the Trails series if you haven't already. And if you tried one of those games and you finished it and you're ready to go into another one, go look at getting the second entry of any of those arcs, because again, they're a fantastic series. So again, just want to say for the final time on this episode, Sharrieff, we love you. We're going to miss you. But again, you're never going to be forgotten. Here, all of us here at Press Start, the fans and your friends, will always, hold the memories that we had with you dear to us, and look forward to eventually when we can meet up again. So anyways, everybody, here for the final time on this episode, I've been one of your co-hosts, Jeremy Culver, aka Darcy. This has been the California Thirst Quencher, Pete Legia, and we really enjoy bringing this episode to you. And also, in honor of Sharrieff, I want to say, everybody, wash your hands and be good to people, because Sharrieff always told you to wash your hands. He's all about that hygiene, so we got to make sure you keep that hygiene as well. But everybody, as always, stay hydrated, stay healthy, stay safe, and keep on gaming. We'll see you guys on the next episode.